We are so blessed to have all of you here with us this morning. And today we are continuing. Actually, there's several things I want to say before I get into the sermon. Today we're continuing a series on upgrading our faith. We've been talking about faith a lot lately, and today we're doing the second part of the sermon. We had an introduction to the series, and we are now looking at the second part, which is Talk to the Boss. We'll get there. So just wanted to share something before we went on. We have changed some things. Actually, several things have been changing recently. But one of the things that we have changed is why. We are making it with a focus on young people. Young, like little ones, not the young adults, young teenage, which they can come as well, but we're trying to reach a younger crowd. We looked at our own church and we said we have a lot of younger ones. And so we decided that for that we would go ahead and make it more applicable to the young ones. And so today, it's very interesting. I want to tell a little story about this. Thank you. I forgot. My bad. Thank you. Forgot my microphone. So I was looking at the schedule, and today we were scheduled to go up front. To go out to the river. Have you ever been to the river there by Alameda? There's a little beach out there, and that beach is a nice little spot. So we had planned to go out there like way before the summer started. And we had planned to go out there, go for a walk, and have some nice time out there with the young people. Well, so happens that the Corrales Church planned on doing the same thing. Today, at the same time, same place. So I reached out to Chanda, and I said, hey, we were going to do the same thing. Why don't we join forces with you? And she's like, awesome. God bringing people together. So if you want to come out and enjoy a time out in nature, you can even stay out there as long as you want to watch the sunset. It's beautiful. It's a nice time to just go out. We have beaches here. They're just not the same as other places. So we would love to have all of you join us if you can. That's at 5:30 this afternoon. Let us bow our heads for prayer. Father in heaven, we thank you for this time together. We thank you for your blessings. And as we open your word, as we continue to understand what it means to get a faith upgrade, we ask that you can guide us, that you can touch our hearts. We thank you in Jesus' name. Amen. I'm going to come down to all of you. Does the camera follow? It does. It does. So we've been blessed to have technology here to try to advance to get things out on Facebook. And so I want to share a story with all of you. I was at the grocery store buying the groceries like I do that every week. And I was there at the different things. And lo and behold, I saw plums, and it said 99 cents a pound. I was like, hey, that's pretty good. Usually it's like $1 something, but I was like, I'm going to get that. And so I asked the guy, I said, hey, these are 99 cents. He said, yeah. And he was putting them out. And I said, okay, cool. So I grabbed some. And I go to the cashier after I grab everything else. And she starts running things by. And I notice she runs the plums by. And it's $6. And I said, I didn't get 6 pounds of plums. What's going on? I say, wait a minute. What's the price on that? And she's like, oh, it's this. I said, no. And she said, I'll go and check afterwards. Let me finish. And I said, okay, fine. So she went and she finished up and she went and checked and she came back, put another number in, and it still gave me the same price. I'm like, wait a minute. Okay, I'm not necessarily wanting them at that price. So if that's the price, I'll just leave them. She's like, okay. And so I left them, and I was thinking, okay, things are great. I went outside to the parking lot, and I look at my receipt, and I still got charged for the plums. And I'm like, oh, no. Oh, no. Okay, so I went back in, and there was someone there. It was the boss and the manager. And they saw that I was in there with a receipt, and they're like, okay, something's going on. And so I talked to the manager, and she said, hey, can I help you? And I said, yeah, I didn't want these plums. The price wasn't right. And she's like, well, let me see if I can help you. So she went ahead and gave me my money back. There are moments in our lives when we need to talk to someone that is in charge, right? There are moments in our lives that we need to talk to someone who has more authority, someone that has more knowledge and maybe even more patience with people that might be a little upset, right? And so this person helped me out. And today's story illustrates how going to the boss can make a difference. We're looking at the story that is found in Mark chapter 9, verses 19 through 24. That's where the story is found, but we're not going to read the whole thing. I encourage you to read the whole thing. But the story starts off, actually, Jesus is now coming down from the mountain. He hasn't had an awesome experience. He has 3 other disciples with him. And as he's coming down from the mountain, they had just experienced God's light out up on the mountain. They had experienced God in their life. And the disciples not up on the mountain, they were down there. And Jesus comes down and he hears some fighting going on. He hears some arguing happening, some discussion, something that's not good. And so Jesus comes down and says, what's going on? Wait a minute, I left you guys are fine. Now I come down from this awesome experience with my Father, and you guys are arguing. What's happening? Now you can imagine what had happened they had gone up, only a couple of them, and I can imagine the disciples might have been a little jealous, the ones that were down there, and so they might have been a little bothered about the whole thing. But as we see and as we read this story, we find that a father speaks up and he says, look, I brought my son, he is demon possessed, I brought him to you, you weren't here, and so I brought him to your disciples. But you know what? Your disciples weren't able to help. They didn't help me at all. And so Jesus he responds in this way. This is his response. He replied to them, you unbelieving generation, how long will I be with you? How long must I put up with you? Bring him to me. So they brought him to him. When the spirit saw him, it immediately convulsed the boy. He fell to the ground and rolled around, foaming at the mouth. How long, now Jesus speaks up, he says, how long has this been happening to him? Jesus asked the father. From childhood, he said. And many times it has thrown him into the fire or the water to destroy him. But if you can do anything, have compassion on us and help us. Then Jesus said to him, if you can, everything is possible to the one who believes. Immediately the father of the boy cried out, I do believe, help my unbelief. When we hear these last words of the father, you can hear the desperation of the father as he's crying out, help us, have compassion. Please, we need your help. I am tired of going on. I need your help with this situation. I cannot do it any longer. I need your help. And I'm frustrated and angry and there's a whole bunch of things going on and your disciples didn't help at all. They're supposed to be your followers. When we look at this story, we find it is a story about faith. It is a story about trying to figure out what faith is. It's a story that evaluates faith. You see, Jesus first points out, when the first part I read, remember, you unbelieving generation. He was telling them, you guys are not in the right place with your faith. And then the next part we see here is also this man, when Jesus speaks, he says, I believe, but help my unbelief. He evaluated himself. He was looking at his own faith. Now tell me this, do you think it was the father's lack of faith that wasn't allowing his son to be healed? He had faith. He had a grain. And if you look at the story, if you find in other versions of the story, Jesus talks about a mustard seed faith in relation to this story. He had faith. It wasn't him. It was on the disciples. that had not had the faith. In fact, if you look at their situation, since they were arguing and bickering and fighting, who did they have in them? They didn't have Christ in them. They didn't have God in them. They had the enemy in them. Do you think the enemy can cast out the enemy? No. And so no way they could go forward and say something with authority, because they themselves had allowed Satan into their lives. And so when we look at this instance, when Jesus speaks to the Father, he says, how long has this been happening? That sounds like a doctor, right? You go to the doctor and he says, well, how long have you been having? How long has this been? A doctor talking, an authority figure talking. We go to Jesus because he has the authority. He is the boss. And now these people, this man, this father comes to Jesus. And so sometimes we hear the doctor of doctors say to us, what is going on in your life? When we come to Jesus, we are faced with the questions that we need to ask about our own life. Am I right with God? Am I living a life that I should? Am I doing things that lead others to Christ, or am I doing things that lead them away? We are forced to look at the reality of our lives when we encounter Christ. And so coming to Jesus, the doctor of doctors, is the best place to ask important questions concerning our faith. If we want to have a faith upgrade, if we want to have healthy faith, we need to evaluate our faith. That's the first step in this series. Today we're going to be focusing on number 1. Evaluate our faith regularly. If you want to get a faith upgrade, what do we mean by upgrade? You know, every now and then your phone will say, you need to get the new system. Right? And you're like, okay, whatever. And then you click on it and say upgrading now, or it says, downloading or whatever, but you upgrade. You can say the same thing about your phone. You might have an old phone. and you might say, you know what, my phone's kind of old, it might be slow, and you say, you know what, I'm going to go ahead and upgrade my phone. I had a picture of all the phones that I've had ever since I've had a cell phone. You know the Nokias? The little Nokias, right? I started off with that one, and I changed phones. Every now and then you upgrade. But we need to keep on focusing on our faith and understanding that part of that upgrade means that we need to evaluate our faith on a regular basis. We need to go to the doctor of doctors and ask the hard questions to be able to understand what is going on with our lives. And so, we need to ask questions. Within this, let me just go back. So evaluating our faith is number 1, right? But within that number 1, we have 5 things we're going to cover today. And you're like, 5? You only talk about 1 usually. So yes, 5, but these are very important. So bear with me. The first one is, does your faith, this is a question, does your faith answer the questions? And what questions are we talking about? What questions are we talking about? Does your current worldview adequately answer some of the basic questions, such as, where do you come from? Where do I come? I come from God. God created me in His image. I don't come from a monkey. Now, that might be easy for you to explain, but when someone comes to you and tries to say certain things, how do you get angry? When they're trying to convince you to become one to believe in evolution? How does your faith portray itself in that moment? What purpose is my life in this world? When we had, a couple weeks ago, we talked about spiritual gifts. And we talked about when we know our spiritual gift, it gives us purpose and direction in our life. It helps us to know ultimately where we are going. It also helps us to understand, if we have a good understanding in our faith, does our faith have a good explanation for evil? This might be a tough one for some. Because someone might come along and say, hey, if God is so good, why is there so much suffering in this world? Do you have a good answer for that? Do you try to answer that? Or do you listen to them and ask questions? Sometimes we try to tell people how they should think, but sometimes that's not the best way to go about it. Sometimes it's just listening to them. Maybe they were hurt. Maybe they have something in their life that led them off the path of believing in God. And maybe they just need someone to listen to them. That might open a door to them to continue to talk to you. If you try to convince them that day, you might not ever speak to them again. You never know. So, does our explanation of our explanation of evil and suffering in this world, does it bring hope to the people that are asking? Another focus, we just talked about how does our faith answer the questions. And when this man brought his son to Jesus, he was looking for answers. He had been suffering for so long. His son has been suffering for so long. He was looking for a solution. Does your faith bring solutions? Does it also get you through the tough times? Does your faith help you to get through the tough times? His father was suffering through so long, and yet he believed, and so he brought Jesus. He says, I cannot do it anymore. Does your current worldview give you the courage and strength to face the difficulties of life? Does it give you a reason to live when your life is tough? Does it give you empowerment to does it give empowerment to others? In other words, are you empowered to empower others? Do you have that kind of faith that is just abounding, that people look at you and say, wow, there's just oozing out of that person, and I feel encouraged when I'm around them. I feel encouraged when they talk. I feel empowered. I'm reminded of Job when we talk about tough faith. So look at what happened to Job. He lost all in one day, and it was like boom, boom, boom. It was like a song. Here's the verse, and the next verse, and the next verse, and the next verse, and it just kept on going, and can you imagine being in Job's situation and losing everything, and then at the end, hearing that your children were all destroyed? And you know what he did? When you read that story, when it comes right at the end, it says that Job worshiped God. Can you imagine yourself in that moment turning to God and saying, your name be praised. You have given me life. I am still alive. Thank you. That's not exactly what he said, but that's all he had. And his wife proved to him a little bit later that he didn't have that much of a wife that empowered him either. His wife wasn't too good on the faith aspect. She was like, just give up and die. Curse God. There's a demonstration of two opposites in one house. Does your faith get you through the tough times? Does your faith lead you to action? Are you active in your faith? Does your current worldview prompt you to an active life of compassion, justice, and service to others? Does it reinforce the human core value of equal rights and respect to all or for all? And does it empower you to treat others in harmony with those values? Does your current worldview center around the highest core values of what it means to be a human being? Or do you see others by saying, they're not a part of who I am? They don't go to my church. They're not part of the club, right? The country club of the church. Do we act that way sometimes? Do we look and see people like outsiders, like people who don't have a place in this world because they're not a part of the church? I just want to put this one up. This is one I saw on Facebook. I was looking for it. I say, hey, that's pretty good. Your daughter brings this guy home. What is the first thing you say? Wow, this is a test of the national, Broadcasting? No. No, it's a test. Look, I know you're like, okay, let me just talk about this one, okay? This is a good one because I have a daughter and I haven't gotten there yet. So we'll get there. So, it's not good to assume. I'm going to say this first. Number one thing I've learned in the last couple weeks, never assume. You can get in trouble for assuming. And so, that said, when we assume, we jump to conclusions, we judge the book by its cover. Our tendency to look at this picture and to immediately start judging, right? We think, oh, this guy, man, he made the wrong decisions. He's made a lot of bad choices. There's no way my daughter should be hanging out with him, right? Is that what we tend to say? Well, what about... Okay, so like the assumption that my daughter brought him because she wants to date this guy, right? Let's just assume that's an assumption. Well, if that's the assumption, then that's a judgment that I'm making, and that the first thing I would say is, what in the world did I do wrong? Right, parents? What in the world did I do wrong to attract my daughter, to have my daughter attracted to someone so, and I'm going to say it, ugly? Right? This is not beauty to most of us. Am I that ugly? I mean, this is reflective of a father, because the daughter seeks out someone that reflects something of their father. I say, whoa, what did I do? That's the first thought, right? If I assume certain things. But what if my daughter's intentions in her heart is not of this world? What if she has brought him home because she has seen in him a need for Christ in his life? And she brought him home because the best place that she saw that he could find that is in my home. Then the thing that I would say is, welcome home. Maybe he never felt accepted, and so he's looking for attention. This is just a child demonstrating in a way he's trying to get attention and he's trying to fit in. I don't know what is going on, but we need to be careful with our judgment and the way we treat others, because we are all human beings. And who knows, maybe the treatment of someone in a different way can bring them, can turn the door, can turn the key, can open the door to someone accepting Christ in a more easy way. What else can we say? Number 4. Does it make you a better person? Does your faith make you a better person as you're seeking to get that faith upgrade? Does your current worldview shape you into a person that people enjoy being around? That's a good question. Do people say, oh, I really like hanging out with them because they're cool, or, they have there's something about that person. Does it give you a humble confidence in who you are and what you are about? Does it make you approachable to people who are uncertain about themselves or life in general? Does it make you a person who listens well? There's something that has actually bothered me as a pastor. I was out the other day and I met some people, and they said, so what do you do? One of the guys asked me kind of to the side. I said, oh, I'm a pastor. He said, oh, a pastor, okay. What church? It's Three Angels SDA Church. Oh, okay. Then when we were with the rest of the group, he said, now be careful of you. This guy's a pastor. And I said, so you had to drop that bomb, didn't you? You know why? Because there's a certain way that people see pastors that sometimes when they know that you are, they shut down. Boom. And I don't mind being a pastor. I just don't want that to be something from keeping someone to approach me. Because some people, you understand what I'm saying. This is something that I've had in the past that I said, why don't people talk to me? They would always talk to everyone else in the church, but they never come to me. And now that hindsight, I'm thinking maybe that was a good thing. There was a lot of problems that maybe it was just too much for me, and God knew what He was doing. But this is true. Sometimes you ask the question, am I approachable? Do people feel like they can come and say, this is going on? When I call on the phone, I never say, hey, I want to talk to you, because people are like, oh no, why should I call him back? It's kind of scary getting a call from the pastor, and the pastor says, I need to talk to you. So, yeah, I mean, think about it. But, are we approachable? Number 5, does your faith give you hope? Does it give you hope in hopeless situations? And can you give hope to others as well? Here we talked about it in Daniel, the story of Daniel's friends in the book of Daniel. And how Daniel's friends said, hey, you have this statue here. And this statue, this golden statue is for us to bow down to show that we are being loyal to you as a king. That's what the king was trying to say. He says, look, there's a whole bunch of people. There's some people here amongst you who are being unfaithful, who have tried to overthrow my kingdom. Now I want to see who are those people. And he was putting the statue up. And so he played music. They played music, and everyone was supposed to bow down if they believed that they should honor his kingdom and they should worship this idol. This was a way of demonstrating that they were not traitors. And what happened? Probably the best men of all of those, because they followed the true God, because they valued people above many other different cultures. Because they saw people in a different way, because they saw God in a different way. They had a God that is a God of love. These men were the ones that stayed standing. And yet, when they were addressed and talked to and said, look, if you don't bow down, we're going to throw you into the furnace, and we're going to make it hotter and hotter. We're going to take 10 times hotter. And they're like, this is what they said. But even if he does not, they're talking about God, if God doesn't save us, he doesn't rescue us, we want you to know, King, to know that we will not serve your gods or worship the golden statue you set up. This is how we feel. This is how it is with us. We're okay with dying. Are you okay with dying? If your time comes, if you get COVID, are you okay with dying? A lot of people are afraid of COVID. I say, and this might be controversial, if God chooses to take me, that he chooses to take me. My purpose here has finished. But I remember a dear friend of mine, Martin, he said, if God hasn't taken us yet, it's either because he wants us to repent, or he has a purpose for our lives, and we haven't finished that yet. And so my friends, continue going. Continue following God. Continue seeking all of these things. Asking those questions. Going through those tough times. When we look at the story of this father, we see that the father evaluates his faith. He turns to Jesus, asking for faith upgrade. He is asking for compassion. He is asking for a miracle. This father comes to Jesus seeking to change the situation in his life. His life has been taken over by the demon, possessing his son and ruining his life. He couldn't sleep or eat without being troubled. And he is looking for answers. He has been through the tough times. And now he takes action and he brings his son to Jesus. He puts him before Jesus in hope that Jesus can heal him. And he says, I know I can improve my life and I need your help. Today, it could be you that is facing a situation. I don't know what situation that you're facing that's taken over your life. You say you need a miracle. You say that you're looking for answers. Your life has become very difficult. You want to take action in your life. You want to do something about it. Sometimes you think that there is no hope. But remember, Jesus is our hope. He is our hope for every situation. And so you come to him and you say, have compassion on me. Help me help my unbelief. I believe, help my unbelief. Let us pray.